Hi there, folks. Me again. I'm back. Bit of a hiatus. Okay, that wasn't much of a hiatus, actually. More like a little vacation while I took care of a bunch of other things. Things I want to talk about. Obviously, last night's game between Boston and Toronto. That was a bit of a rough one. Before I get to that, show off a little something here. A few more things that are getting added to the basement. The blanket and the towel, obviously, it's going to be hung up somewhere or wrapped around me during games. Of course, that big freaking poster there, like Warriors, that's from my brother, who's out in Calgary. That's me going up on the wall, too, sometimes. Another little addition going down here. As to last night's game, oh boy, that was a rough one, wasn't it? Just when I thought we had actually a good hockey game on our hands, everything kind of went down the crapper. It's kind of a difficult game to comment on because, honestly, it was such a sloppy game. You're wondering if was Justin Pogge really that bad, or was the whole team just that awful? And the same could be said of Manny Fernandez and the Boston Bruins. Really, in my opinion, I think Pogge is still not ready for the National Hockey League. He might be another year or so out. That's not necessarily a bad thing. You consider that goaltenders really don't hit their prime until they're in their mid to late 20s, really. There's a few exceptions. Obviously, guys like Marty Brodeur and Patrick Waugh come along. Marc-Andre Fleury certainly comes to mind, as well as a young goaltender who really hit his stride at a younger age. But these are very rare exceptions, and a lot of the real top goaltenders that you see in the NHL these days, Mika Kiprusoff, Evgeny Nabokov, even Tim Thomas, you could take a look at him. And, you know, these guys really didn't hit the big time until they were much, much older. So if Pogge still has room to grow, that's good. Now, of course, if he's hit his plateau, though, at this point, not so good. So that's kind of troublesome. The only good news is we do have Toskala under contract through next season. So if he's healthy and he's playing well, we have that covered at the very least. And then we can really determine whether or not Justin Pogge does belong in the National Hockey League. I hope he does. Certainly he's a young man who's given everything they've asked of him. I'm just hoping that he hasn't plateaued and that he can actually hit another level here, and that would be very good. Now on to some other players that played well last night. Now I'm just going to have to go by the highlights here because I didn't see the game. I was actually at a mixed martial art event last night, Warrior 1 over in Gatineau. If you check out YouTube and look up, I think I'm going to probably put it under Glenn Kulka, Warrior 1 or something like that, because one of the local radio personalities, Glenn Kulka, was fighting in it. You'll see one of the matches from last night that I recorded. Front row seats, what can I say? Anyways, the rest of the team, I mean, I don't understand what the heck's going on with Alexei Ponikarovsky, to be honest with you. All of a sudden, he's playing like we all hoped he could years ago when he broke into the National Hockey League, and he's doing all this without Matt Sundin, which is incredible. Mikhail Grabovski has got that albatross off his back, and all of a sudden he's just playing incredible. Kuhlman seems to have found his scoring touch again. That's good. So the young guys are certainly coming along very well, which is nice to see. I certainly like the way that they matched up Luke Schenn against Alex Ovechkin earlier this week, and he took a lot of punishment, but he kept on going out there and playing hard, so good on him. So, yeah, the young guys are definitely coming along very well. I certainly like the piece that Leafs.com did on John Mitchell recently. I know Mike Ulmer's been talking him up very well lately, so that's always good. So there's ups and downs, I suppose. You could really look at this and say last night's game was bad in a sense that it wasn't very well played from the Leafs perspective. Had they simply been tighter defensively, they probably could have won that game in a cakewalk, considering how loose Boston was. And at the same time, you know, you're saying, well, this kind of give and take. You know, I mean, they did play well, they didn't play well, there was ups and there was downs, and they kind of canceled each other out. So it's tough to really say what's going on. I think the Sabres game earlier on Friday was probably a better telling of how they were doing. And my phone's ringing right now, as you can plainly see, and I'm going to kind of ignore that because I'm trying to do this, which is kind of funny. But anyways, those are my thoughts on last night's game. My thoughts on Friday's game were the typical young Toronto team, give up a lot of goals early, come back but can't quite finish. and that's okay. That's what you're going to see in a young team. I would rather see them really battle back and try to keep a game close than just play really fast and loose like they did last night. Obviously, you don't want to be behind 4 goals when you come back, so that's something they got to work on. But, you know, sloppy games like that last night make it really hard to tell because both teams were so terrible that it's difficult to really get a read on where the team really is. So, anyways, I'll probably be back later this week with a few more thoughts and on how things are going and where things are going, and we will go from there. Until next time.